Let's get it on then, shall we? Mwah. Welcome to Sex on the Peach, your weekly hump day dose of everyone's favourite untalked about topic, sex. Let's get honest, let's get open, let's get comfortable, and let's get into this week's show. Friends, lovers, listeners, happy Wednesday, happy hump day, and happy Sex on the Peach day. I hope that your sketty summers are all going beautifully. Now listen, this has been, shall we say, a sensitive episode to put together because with every breath I take, I'm preparing for the backlash, which I get anyway, but I feel this one in particular might just raise a little hell for myself. But I mean, if it happens, it happens. If this helps just one person, then it's worth it. Okay, as we know, I have a real issue with the way that sex has been handled in society, in the media, in education, in the majority of mainstream porn since literally forever. And so, what I will say, because this episode is for you, my men, my penis owners, my MT boys between the height of 5'10", 5'11", who have sex with women, with vulva owners. I know that you are expected to just know how to fuck, how to make love, how to give pleasure, with some pretty shitty education to start you off, backed up by the fucking nightmare that is the patriarchy. It's not getting you off to the best start. And as we all know, I don't blame you. I blame all of the external bullshit that we are indoctrinated into, and I want us all to be better educated about sex and communication from the beginning. We all know that by now, and maybe one day people will be introduced into sex and intimacy in a healthy way from a young age, and all of this will be a lot easier. Maybe one day. We can only hope. But we are where we are right now, and I quite often hear about, read about, or even personally experience things that are just not ideal, that are not exactly working for the vulva owners that the penis owner sex is happening with. Things that need to be spoken about. Someone needs to say it. And at this point, if not me, then who? Because I have to think, if I'm not going to do it, when I think about it this much and I talk about all of this so much, then who is going to do it? But there's still no way to go about this conversation without feeling like it's condescending. And of course, as soon as I say, here is an episode for the men, the penis owners, who have sex with women and vulva owners, here is some guidance, here are some thoughts, here is some help. There will be a man frothing at the mouth to flip reverse this and tell me that I don't know everything. And do you know what? You'd be right. Or to tell me that I don't know the ins and outs of what men want, what penis owners want. And you know what? You'd be right. So by all means, if you even have the inkling to come at me for this episode for any of the above reasons, I would like to invite you to come and be a guest and do for the penis owners of the world what I am going to do for the vulva owners here today. So you just let me know if you want to take me up on that offer. But as I was saying, there's no way to go about this without feeling like I'm being condescending. But we all know by now, I would hope, if you've ever listened to a single episode of this podcast before, that my thought process on sex getting better is that we all need to work together. So the penis owners who have sex with vulva owners need to hear what the vulva owners need to say. Of course, I know I am not the voice of the vulva owner, but there are a lot of general things that need touching on that were just simply never taught. And it's difficult because the way sex is set up, there is a lot of ego attached to it, which means there's defensiveness. There's a sort of lack of desire to learn because it's almost an admittance of not already knowing. But why would you already know? Why would any of us already know if we aren't given the tools from the off? But when we look at how much ego affects sex, it led to the point where I could barely even come up with a title for the show today. And that is one of my favourite things to do because I was so concerned about offending the men, the penis owners, which might sound ridiculous because full transparency, roles reversed, I don't think anyone would be that worried about offending the women and vulva owners. But also, if offence is caused, it has the potential to shut down the conversation altogether. And I actually really need you all to just stick with me and keep on listening. But I had my two best friends, Devika Joshi and Duncan Burt, my wordsmiths, working on this for me around the clock. We were going from things as simple as womansplaining to try and play on the whole mansplaining thing to be like, hey, we're all in this together, to make it more inclusive. It got as simple as, this one's for the men. But I thought, no, you deserve better. You also deserve a punny title like every other episode. And we even got to the point where we chat GPT'd what a good title for this might be. And do you know what it gave me? Bro, do you even know? That isn't what I went with, by the way. But my point is, I'm almost so concerned about offending someone's ego that it was a struggle to even come up with a title. And that's before we even get into the content of today's episode. But there's a lot we need to talk about. There's the ins and outs of the female anatomy, the orgasm gap, foreplay, sex toys, lube, communication. There's a lot of things that are problematic in penis and vulva owner sex that aren't being talked about and aren't getting any better. And that's what we are going to do today. I really appreciate all of the questions that were sent in. Obviously, we are going to get to those, but what is very interesting, and we're going to get into it in a big way, is I would say a solid 80% of the questions were the same question, which means it is affecting many more of my penis owner friends out there than I quite realised. And again, it's a huge symptom of a poor societal setup. But we'll get there. So, how did I come to a title for today's episode? Well, I thought about one of the things that men just love to explain to a woman. And I would say this: trying to grasp this well-known football concept has some very strong similarities to trying to please your partner. If you don't get the timing and the positioning right, you'll end up missing the goal. So let's get into today's episode. Here is the offside rule of sex. Okay, there is so much to get into today, and before we crack on, I don't want to have to worry about getting into hashtag not all men territory, because I know that not every single piece of information in today's conversation will pertain to every single penis owner listening, in the same way that every single piece of information I give out today isn't going to pertain to every vulva owner who receives pleasure from a penis owner. So let's just scratch the not all before we even get started. Take from it what feels good for you, but more importantly, take from it what might feel good for your vulva owner partner. So I do think there's been so much division between men and penis owners, between women and vulva owners in the sexual space for so long because of ego, because of defensiveness, because of lack of education, because of society, because of all that bullshit. And I would love today if we could please come together. It unfortunately seems to need to be stated that the fact I have decided to open up a conversation today and say, hey, listen, penis owners, these are some of the things that might be really great for your vulva owner partner, doesn't mean that I hate men. And that always seems to be the problem, that if one of us speaks out and just says, hey, there's something that isn't really working, and it seems to be a bit of a generalized thing that's happening amongst women and vulva owners. And I definitely don't love a generalization, but they can sometimes come to fruition because multiple people have the same issue. But if I come out here and speak about men, it doesn't mean I hate men. It doesn't mean I hate penis owners. And that sometimes seems to be the takeaway. I like men. I love men. If I didn't, I wouldn't sleep with them. I mean, do I like every man I've ever slept with? Maybe not, but that's for a different episode. I don't know what you are all doing. If you are having sex with people that you hate, if you are talking about sex and it's about people that you hate, what do you mean? If you hate women and you're having sex with women, that's a problem that aggressively needs addressing. If you are to say that something isn't working in your sexual experience with women and vulva owners, does that mean you hate women? Do you hate women? I fucking hope not, because I'm not a man hater. I like you. Do I sometimes think you need to do better? Yes. Do I think we all need to do better? Yes. But has society sexually prioritized men and penis owners over women and vulva owners since the beginning of goddamn time? Definitely yes. But still, none of this comes from some high horse. I want us all to do better. I love men. I love penis owners. I love women. I love vulva owners. I love every gender identity. I want us all to be having better sex. I think we can all have better sex if we just listen to each other and work together. So know that this conversation today comes from a place of care. It comes from a place of consideration. It comes from a place of wanting you to give your vulva owner partners more pleasure. It comes from me wanting you to be a better, more confident, more communicative lover. And I would hope that in turn, giving your partner more pleasure would lead to you having more pleasure for yourselves, because giving people pleasure brings us pleasure, right? If you don't get pleasure from giving your partners pleasure, that's a whole other conversation, and it's giving selfish lover, and please don't be one of those. But please do keep all of this in mind as we move through the conversation today, because it's for the greater good. I'm not here to slag anyone off. What I will say, interestingly, in terms of my own personal sex life with penis owners, it has quite significantly changed since starting this podcast, since being a woman, a vulva owner who speaks so openly on a public forum about sex. And that's either in a way that it's gotten significantly better with some partners. And I am obviously in a position where if a partner is ever unsure, so many of my personal likes and desires are literally in the public domain. It's giving personal instruction manual if that's something you feel you want or need. Or, it might just be that people are putting a bit more effort in because they're worried that they might end up as a story on the podcast if they don't, which, yeah, could happen. But don't worry, they're all anonymous. On the other side of things, I do often come across the attitude of, well, if you think you know everything about sex, I'm going to have to teach you something new or open your eyes to something new. And I'm always like, sure, go ahead. I love education. I love learning. Please teach me. I'm not sure when I ever claimed to know everything about sex, but if you feel like you want to prove to me that I don't, then let's ride at dawn, baby. But you don't need your partner to have a public podcast to want to please them more. So let's start with a deep dive into the female anatomy, because many men and penis owners are not aware of the full complexities of it. And I don't want that to sound bad, because I say that with no blame, no shame. We really weren't taught it. In fact, we were brought up with psychologists like Freud removing the clitoris from the medical dictionary because he didn't want women to see sex from a place of pleasure. So I cannot tell you how much I initially don't blame you. But once you're grown, listen, there's no excuse anymore. The real info is out there. It's time for us to start doing our research. And if you can point out the UK on a map, why can't you point out the clitoris on one? So grab a diagram and start figuring out where she is, because the amount of TikTok videos that I see of people going around with a vulva map in the street and asking men to point out where the clitoris is, the answers are horrifying. So let's discuss. It is time to become besties. Literal hashtag BFFs with the clitoris, because it is the epicenter of female pleasure. Not just that, I've said it before, it is the only part on a body, any gendered body, whose sole function is pleasure. So if you are a penis owner with a vulva owner partner, it is pretty damn crucial to understand that part of the female anatomy and how it works and how it affects pleasure. It will only up your sex game and make things more enjoyable for you and your partner. So let's chat about the clitoris. It is located just above the vaginal opening. Approximately, it's going to be around pea size. Obviously, that's going to differ on every person, on every vulva, and they are all gorgeous and all wonderful. And whilst she may be small, she is but mighty, because that teeny tiny little button is packed with around 8 to 10,000 nerve endings. And do you really want to be spending time in an area with 8 to 10,000 nerve endings? Imagine 8 to 10,000 nerve endings on a pea-sized area. That many. That's the entire capacity of Leyton Orient's football ground. That's right, I did my research, so you can do yours. Do you really want to be in that small area and not stimulating a single one of them? No, I don't think you do. So it's time to get exploring. Whether you are using your hands, whether you are using your mouth, start gentle, please. Gradually build up pressure, and most importantly, pay attention to what your partner likes, as there are loads of different things that you can try. You can try different techniques. You can try lube. You can try sex toys. If it's oral you're looking to get into in a big way, trust me, there's a good hour-plus episode just on going down on a vulva. So check out Live by the Oral, Die by the Oral Part 1 for all your tips and tricks in that department. But basically, you need to start spending a lot of time with the clitoris and finding out what works for your vulva owner partner or partners. So keep exploring and keep paying attention to their responses and being attentive with that. If they like something, keep going. If they're fallen a bit unresponsive, either give something else a try, or, heaven forbid, ask them what they would like you to try instead. If something else might feel better, a different pressure, a different technique. It's very sexy when someone asks what you want them to do to you. Do you know what isn't sexy? Pretending you just know and then doing things that just don't feel even slightly good. And don't neglect the rest of the vulva because it's all involved. Every part plays a role in sexual arousal. So let's talk about it. We have the labia majora. Now that's the outer lips, which are really there to protect the more sensitive areas. But the labia minora, the inner lips, that's a really sensitive area. So you can stimulate that to increase pleasure, whether that's teasing that area before you get to the clitoris, or whether it's maybe you stimulate the clitoris with your tongue and your mouth and you use your fingers to stimulate the labia minora at the same time. Just take your time exploring these areas with your partners, with your hands, with your mouth. Pay attention to how and when your partners are reacting. Make friends with the vulva. They all look different, just like all of your penises do. They are all great. So look at it. Learn what it looks like. Learn what goes where. Learn what feels good. Why do we not want to make best friends with the genitals of the people that we are sleeping with? Come on now. We then have the vaginal opening, which of course is where penetration happens. But this is not the sole source of pleasure for many women, of course. Please, I beg you to check out the last episode about National Orgasm Day because we talked a lot about the orgasm gap. And for a quick rundown about that, it's the fact that women and vulva owners are having a lot less orgasms with their penis owner partners than the penis owners are having. That's not because the female orgasm is elusive, because they're having a shit ton of them by themselves, or when they're having sex with other vulva owners. So the orgasms are happening. It's just not with you. And that is because of the hard focus on penetration being the only and right way to have sex. And I do have a lot to say about the language used around this as well, because I think language in the sexual space generally can be quite problematic. And the fact that we have come to separate foreplay and sex as separate entities, when actually, if you are engaging in oral sex, if you are engaging in hand stuff with a partner, that's all still sex. But because we've labelled it foreplay, we've labelled it as it's always leading on to something else. But it doesn't have to. So stop feeling like the only real sex is penetration, because it just isn't true. It isn't the case, and it isn't giving vulva owners the most pleasure that they can have. And obviously, if you as a penis owner receive pleasure from penetration, of course, that's a delicate balance for you and your partner to work out the ratio of where you're going with that. But we can't only be focusing on one specific part of sex, because also, how boring is that? It's a no. And only 18% of women orgasm through penetration alone. And unfortunately, no, not all of your vulva owner partners are in that 18%. So keep listening. Penetration wise, if you are receiving oral, yes, it can absolutely feel amazing to have a finger or fingers in you at the same time. But when we are talking about solely penetration alone without external clitoral stimulation, we are talking about that elusive G-spot, which is a bit of a mystery for some, to be honest. And a lot of people don't know that the G-spot is just an internal extension of the clitoris, and it's mostly located a few inches inside the vagina on the front wall. And for some women and vulva owners, stimulating that G-spot area can, yes, lead to some pretty fucking intense orgasms, but it's not guaranteed for everyone. And it's often easier to reach with your fingers than your penis because of just the direction that it heads in. It's very difficult. I don't know if that's the right word. It's very rare to come across a penis that bends in the exact way that you might need for it to stimulate the G-spot, which is often why only a couple of positions can make that happen. It's unfair. It's giving... It should be more accessible for all of us. We deserved better. But listen, we've got what we're given, so we've got to roll with it and make the best of it. But there is a very simple rundown of the female anatomy, and understanding it is going to be a great start. And I would love for everyone to get more on board with it. But knowing specifically what works for your partner or partners is going to be key. So don't be afraid to ask what feels good. Don't feel like you are expected to just know that information. You know, every single time that I have sex with a new sexual partner, I have to work them out. We always have to work each other out. Don't give in to this bullshit from society that you were expected to know what every woman wants. That's not possible. So let's let go of that. Start again. Have a reset. Talk to your partner. Be a good observer of non-verbal cues. By learning all of these things, by starting to keep the conversations open, you're only going to become a more attentive lover. And please trust me when I say this, you do not know your partner's bodies better than they know their bodies. So if they tell you they like something or they don't like something, listen. Don't think that you know better, because you don't. That doesn't mean you can't continually explore things together. You should be doing that. But if a partner tells you they don't like something you're doing, get over yourself, get over your ego. It doesn't matter. Every body is different. Every body experiences pleasure differently. You are never going to know what works for every single person out there. And if some people don't like something you are doing, it's okay. Don't get defensive. Don't get resentful. Sex is a mutual thing. Work together to find what brings you both pleasure, and do not belittle your partner for the sake of your own ego. People are well within their rights to tell you if they aren't enjoying something, as are you to your partners. Again, it's a two-way street. This isn't a performance that's being reviewed. We aren't giving it 1 to 5 stars in The Guardian. It's a collaboration, a collaborative effort. I promise you, once you let go of your ego, once you free yourself from the shackles of society's expectations of you to just know sex, you will have such a better time for it. So please, for me, just try it. It's not just going to make your sexual experiences more satisfying and enjoyable for your vulva owner partner or partners. It's also going to make them more satisfying and enjoyable for you, I promise. And realistically, when we are thinking about foreplay, I would suggest that actually this is what happens way before you even start to get physically intimate. Because once you're getting physically intimate, that's sex. The concept of foreplay often gets reduced to a few minutes of touching and kissing before sexual activity, but it's actually a much broader, more nuanced aspect of relationship dynamics. The real foreplay is what's been going on that day. And let's talk about why foreplay is so crucial, especially for women and vulva owners, and how it is so much more than just what happens in the bedroom. And what's interesting is if I ask a lot of women and vulva owners what their biggest non-sexual turn on is, it is their partner doing chores in the house without being asked. It's their partner choosing to wash the dishes, to do the laundry, to do these basic things that are just expected of women on a daily basis. For their penis owner partner to take it upon themselves and do them. That is a huge turn on for women. And that's really saying that the gender stereotypes that are clearly still in place are not quite working. Because why are we getting horny over a penis owner partner doing the bare minimum that we are expected to do every day? And it's because it simply demonstrates partnership and shared responsibility. When a partner takes the initiative in these everyday tasks, it shows that they are attentive, considerate, and invested in the partnership. And those qualities are often incredibly appealing and sexy. So this insight really shifts our understanding of foreplay, actually, because it's clear that foreplay isn't confined to just what happens right before sex. Instead, it begins much earlier in the day. Imagine starting your day with a simple yet thoughtful gesture, like offering to make your partner a cup of coffee or sending them a sweet or dirty text during the workday to let them know you're thinking about them. These small acts set the stage for intimacy, for connection, and they make the entire experience of sex much more meaningful and much better. So foreplay in this broader sense is actually about creating a general climate of intimacy, and it essentially is a way to build anticipation. It's a continuous process that reflects your ongoing investment in your partner's happiness and satisfaction. It's about showing that you are invested in your partner's pleasure and well-being, and that begins long before you physically touch each other. For many women and vulva owners, the build-up to sexual intimacy is as important, if not more so, than the physical act itself. Foreplay involves creating a sense of connection and understanding, and that actually transcends physical touch, because that intimacy, that showing that you care, not just in the moment, but throughout your daily interactions, makes a fucking difference. When you are attentive to your partner's needs, when you show affection and support in those ways, you are reinforcing a deeper bond. You will have a richer sex life because of it. That emotional investment then makes sexual experiences more enjoyable and fulfilling for many women because it aligns with their broader sense of connection in the relationship. Consider this: if you and your partner only connect emotionally or intimately when you are in bed, that can create a sense of disconnection. Ignoring each other through the day and expecting to magically connect once you are in bed just doesn't work. It doesn't start the minute that you put your fingers in your partner's vagina. That's just not how it works, and it's not just a way to get started. Foreplay is the key to actually enjoying sex for most women and vulva owners. So what does this look like in practice? It means being present and engaged in your partner's life. It means showing support for their needs. It means finding ways to express your care and commitment outside of the bedroom. By paying attention to your partner's needs, by sharing those responsibilities, you create a more satisfying and fulfilling sexual relationship, because when you do then come together to be physically intimate, the experience is rewarding for both partners. And also, let's dive into a topic that doesn't get nearly enough attention, and that is sexual aftercare. In fact, most people don't even know what aftercare is. Well, it's the time after sex where you and your partner can connect. That can be a simple gesture like cuddling, sharing a shower, or even just getting each other a glass of water. That shit can work wonders. It's a time to check in emotionally. Men, aftercare can be very beneficial, but I do get it's not always easy to bring up if it's not in your usual practice. So how do you start? Well, listen, you keep it chill. It doesn't have to be some huge intense thing. Asking, how are you feeling? Was that good for you? That sounds cliche and cringy, but no, it's fine. It's actually a really easy way to open the door for conversation that can strengthen your sexual connection and your sexual relationship. If something felt a bit off during sex, aftercare is also a great time to address it in a gentle way so that you both feel understood and supported. To make it clear, this isn't about critiquing what just happened. It's just about building on the physical connection for the both of you. And yes, as much as we, the vulva owners of the world, are hugely acquainted with the cup and run, practical stuff like cleaning up should also be part of the aftercare routine. That's once again a very easy way to help your partner feel comfortable. For any men out there who might not be familiar with aftercare, it's going to just be about normalizing this as a practice. It's just as important as any other part of sex. It's all about making aftercare feel like a natural part of your intimacy, not some extra task, because aftercare isn't just an add-on. It's a great part of a healthy, connected sexual relationship. It's about making sure everyone involved feels sexually cared for and respected. So next time you're getting down to it, I challenge you to give some aftercare a go and see how it feels. You let me know. Okay. So we're changing lanes for a hot second and we're going to look at some stuff that might not be dinner table conversation, but it's very important to understand sexual health and well-being. And if you care about your vulva owner partner, then I'm going to say bottom line, you should care about their health. And aside from actual STIs, there's an episode about that specifically, if you feel you need that. There are a few really common things that can affect vulva owners that can be caused or triggered by sexual activity. So you should know this stuff in the same way that it's up to us as vulva owners to understand things that can affect the penis, whether that's going to be something like erectile dysfunction or premature ejaculation. Like, there's a lot going on with our genitals and we need to be informed, even if it feels unpleasant, even if it feels unsexy. I don't fucking care. If you don't know, get to know, because if it affects your partner, it's going to affect your ability to have sex for a while, and you need to be understanding of these things. Otherwise, to put it bluntly, you're just kind of an asshole. And a female's vaginal pH can be as sensitive as a fragile ego. So I'm sure some people will understand at least that. Multiple people sent in the question this week asking, why do women have to pee right after sex? And I know you all know we do it, but clearly you don't know why. And yet you probably should, because it's not just some cute habit. There's, of course, science behind it. Basically, peeing after sex helps flush out any bacteria that might have sneaked into the urethra during the fun, and that reduces the risk of cystitis or urinary tract infections, or UTIs as they are more commonly known. And let me tell you, they are not pleasant. So yes, by all means, have that post-sex cuddle, but when your partner needs to go to the bathroom, let them. Holding on to them is not helpful in the moment. So next time your partner makes a beeline for the bathroom, know it's all part of staying healthy. So let's chat about something called thrush, or as some know it, a yeast infection. This is caused by an overgrowth of something called candida. And that is a type of yeast that's just kind of chilling in small amounts on our skin and in our mucous membranes. But when things get out of balance, thanks to factors like antibiotics, hormonal changes, even just wearing tight clothes, candida can throw a wild little party. And it's also very common for it to be triggered by sexual activity. Listen, I fucking hate thrush with my whole existence, or thrushetta, as I started referring to it when I was working in Italy, when we were giving it show tights in 40-degree heat, and I was terrified it would rear its ugly head. I do make jokes about it all the time, but I fucking hate it. But we also have to normalize it because it's really fucking common. And men, you can get it too. And it is very easily treatable with creams or medications. Listen, I've got a fucking tube of Canesten in my bag at all times. And while thrush is not an STI as such, it can be passed between partners. And also sex when you have thrush can be really fucking uncomfortable and painful for a vulva owner. So if your partner tells you that they have it, that's what it is. And you should lay off having sex whilst it clears up, because the vulva is also much more vulnerable to tears and other infections during that time. Also moving on to bacterial vaginosis, or BV for short. This isn't one I've ever personally experienced, so I can't speak from that. But basically, this is when the balance of bacteria in the vagina gets a bit out of whack. Think of it like a neighborhood where the friendly bacteria are suddenly heavily fucking outnumbered by the rowdy ones. And from what I understand, it can be really fucking unpleasant for my vulva owner friends. And this is the one that can cause a bit of a funky odor, which obviously is something so many people feel insecure about already, but it's especially noticeable after sex or during periods. And again, it's not an STI, but sexual activity can influence its occurrence. Treatment for this usually involves antibiotics, but once again, for your vulva owner partner's sake, you should avoid having sex whilst it clears up. And you should also be supportive and not fucking shame people for just experiencing what bodies do. All of these things need to be normalized. And bottom line, these topics might feel a bit awkward to bring up, but understanding them is crucial for both partners' health, for all of you. So open conversation, empathy, and a proactive approach to sexual health is going to make all the difference. So let's keep the conversation going and make sure we are all well informed and comfortable discussing these essential aspects of our sexual well-being. Okay, thank you. Whilst I'm on these notes, I'm going to do an episode on period sex and menstruation and the way vulva owners' sex and sex drives can be totally different depending on what time of the month it is, because it's actually a whole thing. But it's worth touching on because when it comes to period sex, it seems that men and penis owner attitudes can really vary, and they can be influenced by anything from personal comfort levels to cultural beliefs. Some people are totally open and accepting, and they just see it as another part of sex. Some even appreciate the extra lubrication. It's just more intimate time with their partner. They don't care what time of the month it is. And it's also definitely worth being aware of the health perks because it can actually really help with menstrual cramps. And for some vulva owners, period sex is literally their best sex. You might have neutral or mixed feelings. You might be okay with period sex, but only under certain conditions, like using towels to manage any mess or avoiding the heaviest days. Maybe you feel curious but hesitant. Maybe you need a bit of reassurance or guidance from your partner to feel comfortable. On the flip side, some men and penis owners feel completely uncomfortable or squeamish about the idea of period sex, and that's often because of the sight of blood or the perceived messiness. These feelings can come from cultural taboos or just a lack of exposure to the realities of menstruation. For some, it's deeply ingrained cultural beliefs and fear of societal judgment that make period sex seem like a no-go, especially in places where menstruation is still shamed and considered unclean or taboo, because yes, that's a thing. But how do we navigate these different attitudes? Well, you got to get comfortable with talking about period sex without judgment. Share your feelings, share your preferences, and make sure that everyone is being heard and respected. Period sex personally isn't for me because I actually find it painful, and that's its own conversation. But some vulva owners absolutely love it and get so much more pleasure when everything is a bit more sensitive. And that is something you have to be willing to discuss and navigate with your partner. So let's educate each other about the facts. Period sex is generally safe. It even has its benefits. And for those worried about the mess, practical solutions, use a towel, use a waterproof sheet, or just hop in the shower. It can all make a big difference. Ultimately, as with everything else, of course, it's all about mutual consent and comfort, and both partners need to feel good about it, which means being open to discussing and revisiting the topic as needed. But when handled with care and understanding, period sex can actually strengthen a sexual connection between partners. Maybe riding that Red Sea will make your sex life red hot. So have a chat and figure it out, my friends, okay? And lastly, while we're in the sexual health arena, contraception. First up, let's talk about the real life consequences of sex, especially for women and vulva owners, because they carry a disproportionate burden of fear when it comes to getting pregnant. And unfortunately, societal norms tend to place the blame squarely on them. Don't even get me started on America. Anyway, this can make sex feel like a high-stakes game where we have to tread very carefully to avoid the potential pitfalls of an unplanned pregnancy. If men and penis owners don't actively participate in managing contraception, it's easy for them to stay detached from the full impact of these consequences. But when both partners share this responsibility, it not only helps level the playing field, but it also ensures that everyone is on the same page. Understanding contraception is only going to lead to more respectful and healthier, sexual relationships. Men who are informed about reproductive justice and see it as a shared responsibility are way less likely to engage in harmful behaviours like stealthing. And for anyone who doesn't know what that is when someone removes a condom without their partner's consent. But if we get into a mindset where reproductive rights are a collective concern, we're not only addressing these harmful practices, but we are also reinforcing the importance of consent and respect in our sexual interactions. And I know that might sound wild, but this kind of behaviour has unfortunately become so common and recognised that we've now seen changes in the legal landscape because FYI, stealthing in the UK is actually illegal. So if you even think about slipping that condom off without consent, I will see you in court, baby. And while cisgendered men might not experience pregnancy firsthand, you still need to get educated about it. Understanding how birth control works and its effect on mental health is crucial. For many women and vulva owners, hormonal contraceptives can lead to mood swings. It can lead to emotional changes. By taking the initiative to learn about these effects, you can show your partners greater empathy and greater support, which is what you should want to do. Let's not forget the importance of safeguarding your partner's health in all types of relationships, including casual ones. It's really important to have honest conversations about contraception and STIs to keep things safe and enjoyable for everyone involved. If both partners are open about their sexual health and contraception choices, it reduces the risk of unprotected pregnancies, it maintains trust, it maintains respect. And here's the kicker: when men actively participate in contraception, it actually benefits everyone's sexual experience because women and vulva owners can enjoy sex without the constant worry about unplanned pregnancies. And that just leads to a more relaxed and pleasurable experience because when we are at our most relaxed, that's when we get the most pleasure. So let's break these outdated stereotypes, embrace some shared responsibility, and make sex a more enjoyable and stress-free experience for everyone involved. Because by doing so, we create a healthier and more equitable approach to sexual health that benefits all parties, right? Okay, cute. Sexual health section done. Moving on. Sexual aids. That's right, babies. Sex toys and lubes. We like them. We want them. Stop hating them. They are your friends. They are not your enemies. They are your companions, not your competition. So let's take a moment for how men and penis owners feel about sex toys and lube, which, let's be honest, is an extremely under-discussed topic. So for some men and penis owners, and you, my friends, are my favourites, my A-star students, my gold medalists, sex toys are a no-brainer. A great way to add excitement and variety. You see toys as tools for enhancing pleasure, both for yourselves and your partners. You know that toys can help explore new sensations and positions with your partner that might not necessarily be possible otherwise. Sex toys are all about boosting satisfaction, keeping things fresh in the bedroom. Same with lube. Some guys are all in. Again, you're my favourite. I love you. Seeing lube as a must-have for enhancing pleasure, enhancing comfort. You know it can make everything smoother, literally, and really amp up your experience, whether it's a longer session or trying something new, like using toys, or even trying anal sex. You get that lube isn't just about making things easier. It's also about taking care of yourselves and your partners by reducing friction which can help prevent discomfort and even lower the risk of STIs. So, to my men and penis owners who are curious about sex toys and lube, but approach them with some reservations. Maybe you've never used them before and aren't quite sure how they would fit into your sexual routine. You might think, am I going to use this right? Or what if it doesn't do anything for us? And this curiosity is tempered by a bit of uncertainty. But with the right information and a little encouragement from your partner, you could be open to giving it a try. So if you're in this group, you might just need a little nudge and some guidance on how to start. And maybe that might look like picking out a toy together that feels less intimidating and like an easy place to start exploring. I would recommend get on your sex toy journey and thank me later. Maybe you use lube sometimes, maybe when your partner asks or in certain situations where it feels necessary, but you don't see it as an every time thing. To be fair, I don't use lube every time, so this is also okay, but I would recommend it more often than not. Or maybe you are interested but worried about the mess, or you think using lube might mean something is wrong. It doesn't, FYI, but we'll get into that in a second. Because lastly, let's talk about the men and penis owners who have a more cautious, or actually, let's just say a negative view of sex toys and lube. And I'm going to go into this with no judgment, but at the same time, when we are out the other side of this conversation, I want you to consider maybe being a bit more open-minded about it and maybe exploring with sex toys and lube, okay? Because closing the door on things that bring your partner pleasure is actually a big no. It's a huge red flag. But I'm giving you all a chance because maybe we just need some more information on all of it. And these negative feelings often stem from feelings of insecurity or competition. It's not uncommon for some men and penis owners to worry that a toy, especially those designed for intense stimulation, could somehow replace them in their partner's eyes. You might fear that if a toy can do the job, you might become less important or less capable of providing pleasure. And these feelings are deeply rooted in societal messages about masculinity and performance, where bigger, stronger, better is often equated with success. So I get it. It's part of a much bigger problem. It's giving Andrew Tate, it's giving toxic masculinity 101, and that is something that has been invented. So overcoming these insecurities, it's going to require some reassurance that toys are meant to be an addition to the sexual experience, not a substitute for the connection and intimacy between partners. You might think needing lube is a sign that something is wrong with you, like you are not doing your job right if natural lubrication isn't enough. Well, once again, I need you to understand that lube is just a helpful addition, not a sign of failure. Some women do experience vaginal dryness, and that's no reflection on them, it's no reflection on you, but we have something that helps with that, so let's fucking use it. And what if I were to tell you that women are 80% more likely to orgasm if you use lube during a sexual encounter? Does that change your mind? Does that help? Surely you want that for your partner, right? Because if you don't, that's worrying. And I know that cultural and societal stigmas play a huge role here. For men and penis owners from more conservative backgrounds, lube might seem unnecessary or even inappropriate, and changing these views really requires education and normalizing lube as just part of a healthy, enjoyable sex life. Sex toys might be seen as unnecessary or even taboo. You might view the idea of using sex toys as something that challenges your traditional views of sex, or you might have been raised with the belief that toys are only for people who aren't satisfied with their partners. It's all bullshit. You are literally missing out on so much pleasure and on giving so much pleasure. So if you actually want to be what society expects of you, which is a fantastic fuck, then ironically, you need to be overcoming all of these stigmas that society created in the first place, which isn't easy, but it's possible through education, open-mindedness, and slowly normalizing the use of toys, of lube, as part of a healthy, adventurous sex life. And another big reason some of you might shy away from toys and sexual aids is quite simply a lack of knowledge. You might have heard myths or seen unrealistic portrayals in the media that make you feel unsure about what to expect. And again, in this case, education is key. Just learn about the different types of toys, their uses, how they can enhance pleasure. All of that stuff can help dispel fears and misconceptions. Start with simple, non-intimidating toys that can help build confidence and just ease into the idea without it feeling too overwhelming. Sex toys are there to enhance your sexual experience together, not to replace anyone or anything. You can research and explore the world of sex toys with your partner. Choose something that excites both of you. That shared experience can help build anticipation around the idea of incorporating toys into your routine. I promise you, when you have a great experience with lube and with toys, it helps shift the perception from them being unnecessary extras to actually an essential part of your sexual toolkit. I get that men's attitudes towards this stuff are as varied as men themselves, but with open communication, just some education and a supportive, non-judgmental approach, I really want you all to become more comfortable and even enthusiastic about the idea of incorporating sex toys and lube into your sexual repertoire. I promise you, we, the vulva owners, we want them, and we will only think you are better lovers for it, and that's what you want, right? Okay, and the last thing we're going to talk about today before I head into the question arena, my favourite topic, communication. All right, let's get into it. We need to talk about the huge gap in your conversations about sex. For too long, sex has been seen through a narrow lens, whether the focus is either on scoring or just getting through it, or whether you are just having it or not. This simplistic view does not do justice to what sex is actually really about, and that is connection, intimacy, and mutual respect, and that goes for even the most casual of encounters. Growing up, most of us had very limited resources of information on sex. Education, shite. The media, filled with unrealistic portrayals that don't reflect real-life intimacy. And conversations with friends, more often than not, they are filled with bravado and barely scratch the surface of meaningful discussion. And so it becomes this warped view of sex, and it becomes one that's about conquest rather than connection. And what's the real issue here? There is a glaring absence of real, honest conversations about sex among men and penis owners. There's a culture where sex is treated like a scoreboard. It's about, did you get laid? Or how soon until you do? And this kind of thinking reduces sex to a mere accomplishment rather than a shared experience. It ignores the needs, the feelings, the pleasure of your partners, which actually can make you kind of a shitty lover, which I presume is the exact thing you don't want to be, because you're not going to admit that to your friends, are you? And what's needed is a real shift. You all need to start talking about sex in a way that's open and real. Imagine having a conversation about sex as casually and openly as you would about finding a good restaurant or bar. It shouldn't be a taboo or awkward topic. It should be as normal as talking about any other aspect of life. I know that probably seems easy for me to say because it's all I do, but that does need to be something that we are working towards. It's time to get vulnerable. And I understand that men and penis owners often find themselves isolated when it comes to discussing sexual matters. It's one of the reasons I created this podcast, so that people could feel safe and in good company and never alone. Because everyone always thinks whatever they are dealing with sexually, that no one else is going through it. But I promise you, millions of other people are. And that is why we need to have these conversations. And most of us haven't been taught how to have these conversations. You need to be able to talk to your friends about sex, men. You need to be able to ask questions. You need to share your experiences. You need to learn from each other. Whether it's about how to improve your sex life or just deal with the everyday stuff that comes with being sexual beings, you should be open to having these discussions, because it's okay for you to masturbate. It's okay for you to watch porn. Are you talking about any of these things? No, you should be. Sex is a normal, healthy part of life, and having questions or uncertainties about it is also extremely normal, because as I will always say, you can never know sex. I certainly will never claim to know sex as an all-encompassing thing. It's just not possible. Yet we often let shame or awkwardness prevent us from talking openly. But when we break this silence, we can create better relationships and a much healthier perspective on sex. It's about making the conversation part of our everyday lives so we can all benefit from a deeper understanding of each other, and that way we can have more fulfilling experiences. And I get it, for men and penis owners, the pressure to always be confident and in control can make these conversations feel even more daunting. And society often teaches men to be stoic, to avoid showing vulnerability. And unfortunately, this has extended to how the majority communicate about sex. But the truth is, effective communication in this area can make all the difference between a fulfilling relationship and one where both partners are just constantly left guessing. Yes, I know some of you are totally open already and willing to dive into these discussions. You're not afraid to ask for feedback or to explore what really works for both you and your partners. But let's be real, not everyone is that comfortable. Many men and penis owners feel a sense of reluctance or massive discomfort when it comes to these topics. And this does stem from cultural conditioning that has discouraged you from expressing your emotions, especially about something as intimate as sex. And you might worry about being judged, rejected, or just not measuring up to expectations. And this discomfort just leads to avoidance, which only creates more misunderstandings and more unmet needs. You might worry about your sexual performance or feeling inexperienced, and these feelings can actually be quite paralyzing and contribute to real sexual anxiety. So if you don't talk about your concerns, if you stay silent and you are in a relationship, this will only deepen the divide between you and your partner, because this silence can be misinterpreted as disinterest or lack of care, when in reality, it's often fear or insecurity at play. And as always, cultural and societal bullshit add another layer of complexity, because men and penis owners are so often portrayed as unemotional. And that in itself discourages people from talking openly about things like sex and intimacy. It leads to stigma around expressing vulnerability. So I get it. It makes it even harder for you to initiate these important conversations. And many men and penis owners come from backgrounds where discussing sexual matters is seen as inappropriate or embarrassing. And these taboos have created deep-seated barriers to open communication, and it has left many men and penis owners feeling trapped in their inability to express their needs or concerns. And when I was very young, much younger, jokes, still young. When I was much younger, I have spoken about this story before, was in a relationship with someone who was about 8 years older than me at the time. And he just had a much lower sex drive than me, which obviously in the eyes of society, God forbid, surely shouldn't happen because the men have the high sex drives and the women have the low sex drives, right? It's always the men craving the sex. Not true. But he had a much lower sex drive than me. And instead of having a space where he could talk about that and actually perhaps realize he's not the only man, the only penis owner out there in the world experiencing that, he put the shame onto me and made me feel embarrassed for having a higher sex drive. He sent me to therapy for sex addiction. I was 19 years old. I didn't have a sex addiction. I was just horny. But if there had been a safe space to have that conversation, hell, fuck, maybe if there had been a podcast like this one where they could have listened and been like, well, shit, actually, loads of other men are dealing with the same thing that I am and thinking that they should be the sexual provider in the relationship, but they actually have a lower sex drive than their partner. So what does this mean and how do we navigate that? Things might have been a lot easier for both of us, but that wasn't an option. Those conversations weren't happening. I was not of an age where I knew how to approach dealing with those conversations. I was not the person that I am now. As I always say, I've learned my way here. So there are a lot of problems. There are men out there worrying about their sex drives, dealing with erectile dysfunction, dealing with premature ejaculation, dealing with all of these things that are very common amongst men, but none of you are talking about it. So what can be done to overcome these barriers? Because I promise you, we want you to talk. We want to have these conversations. Communication is lubrication, as my favorite Dr. Emily Morse always says. Talk to us. So to start, education plays a big role because once you start understanding sexual health, anatomy and communication a bit more, that actually boosts your confidence and gives you the tools to talk about sex more effectively. And it's not just about knowing the basics, it's about feeling informed enough to discuss these topics sensitively and intelligently with your partners, with your friends. And sharing what you learn with your partner can also help both of you feel more comfortable and empowered in your conversations. Positive reinforcement obviously is always another very powerful tool. When your partner is willing to talk about sex, acknowledge and appreciate their openness. Highlight the benefits of these conversations because that is going to be increased intimacy, mutual satisfaction. It reinforces the value of open communication. Active listening is also another really crucial element, but another really good way to have these conversations with your partner because it's not just to hear what your partner is saying. You need to really listen. And that means putting aside your own agenda for a moment and fully engaging with what they are expressing. Asking open-ended questions can also be incredibly helpful. Instead of a simple yes or no question, try something that invites deeper reflection, like, what do you enjoy most about our intimate or sexual time together? Or is there anything you've been wanting to try or talk about? And these kinds of questions encourage your partner to share more openly, which is only going to lead to a richer and more meaningful conversation. Obviously, if you really struggle with communication and it is a huge, huge challenge for you, that is okay, but don't hesitate to seek some help. There's no fucking shame in it. Any sex therapist can help provide a structured and supportive environment to explore these issues, because it's a common issue, because none of us were taught to talk about it. So trying to navigate that as an adult when you've already spent however many years having sex, it's a fucking minefield. And sometimes having a neutral third party can make it easier to address sensitive topics and find solutions. And therapy can also help you develop better communication skills and strengthen your emotional connection, which in turn leads to a more satisfying sexual relationship. So if your struggle with communicating about sex is standing in the way of your partnerships, of your sexual relationships, of your romantic relationships, there's no shame in going and finding out why that is. I promise you, I truly get that men actually do face unique challenges due to cultural, societal, and yes, sometimes personal factors. But improving your dialogue is going to change everything so significantly and lead to a deeper understanding and much stronger connection with your partners. In the end, effective communication about sex is genuinely so fucking crucial for a healthy and satisfying relationship. So by educating yourself and enhancing your sexual communication, it's ultimately going to lead to a more fulfilling relationship for everyone involved. So I implore you to be the man, the penis owner, who strikes up a conversation about sex today. Whether that's with your partner or even just with a friend. Forget the shame. Start being the person to talk about it. I promise you, as someone who does it publicly, you're gonna be fine. And if you open the doors for better sex chat, your sex life is going to get about 1,000,000 times better. Okay, let's talk about the questions today. So, I was not expecting this episode to be this long. And so for the sake of just everyone's time and life, I'm going to focus today on the one question that I got sent by a good 80% of the people that sent anything in. And the rest of the questions I'm going to answer in a Sunday spooning episode. So this Sunday will be for you, my men, my penis owners, to answer the rest of your questions that you sent in. Because otherwise it's giving too long. You know, ain't nobody's attention span handling this. So you'll just have to wait until Sunday. And yes, I am in fact edging you with the questions, but we'll get to them in a couple of days. So let's talk about this question. And it was, of course, does size matter? Now, society has a lot to answer for when it comes to the pressure that men feel about their size. Media, especially pornography, often portrays a very, very unrealistic standard that can make men feel very inadequate if they don't measure up to what is shown on screen. And these portrayals create completely unnecessary pressure and can really negatively affect self-image and confidence. And I would say that cultural norms also play a role in shaping beliefs about size, because in some cultures, there is a significant emphasis on size as a marker of masculinity or sexual prowess. But these norms do not reflect what most people find important in a sexual relationship. And it's so, so important. It is essential to recognize that these influences are often based on myths and exaggerations rather than reality. So let's really dig into this question of whether penis size matters, because it's one that can stir up a lot of thoughts and feelings for people. And it's not just about the physical side of things, but also the psychological and emotional aspects that come into play. So let's break it down. And let's cover everything from the physical realities to the emotional factors that can influence how we think about size. So, when it comes to sexual satisfaction, the truth is that preferences for penis size vary widely from person to person. Some people might have a preference for a particular size. But for the vast majority, what really enhances a sexual experience has way less to do with size and much more to do with the overall connection and how their partner engages with them. Sexual satisfaction is not a one-size-fits-all situation, and yes, that pun is intended. Other factors: emotional connection, communication, foreplay, the techniques used during sex play a much bigger role in creating a fulfilling experience. A partner who knows how to touch, how to talk, how to engage in a way that turns you on is way more important than size. And let's talk anatomy. The vaginal canal is generally about 3 to 4 inches deep. Yes, it is pretty amazing in its ability to expand and contract, but most of the nerve endings that contribute to sexual pleasure are located in the outer third of the vagina, which means that the majority of pleasurable sensations can be accessed without needing a larger size. And as we've mentioned so much today, most women need clitoral stimulation to reach orgasm. And since that is external, size doesn't play much of a role in that type of stimulation. So again, it's all about technique, attention, and understanding what your partner enjoys. You know, when you start having these conversations at school and that terrible saying went round and it was like, it's not the size of the ship, it's the motion in the ocean. And we were like, what a terrible saying, but it's true. It's correct. I'd still go by that. It's not the size of the ship. It is the motion in the ocean. It is all about technique. If there is one thing to take away from this discussion, it's that technique matters way more than size. Knowing how to engage with your partner, knowing their likes, their dislikes, being attentive to their needs, all of that leads to a much more satisfying sexual experience than simply having a certain size. What good does it do having a larger sized penis if you are an inattentive, selfish lover? It literally means nothing. And effective sexual technique, that includes everything from the foreplay that we've spoken so much about today to exploring different positions that might be more pleasurable for your partner. It's about communication, checking in with your partner about what feels good and being open to experimenting with new things. Sex is just one small part of a much, much bigger picture. And I would say that when it comes to confidence and self-esteem, yes, a lot of men worry about size because they think it directly impacts their ability to satisfy a partner. But in reality, confidence has a much bigger impact on sexual satisfaction. When someone feels good about their body and their abilities, They're not in their head. They're in the present moment when they are engaging in sexual activity. Their mind isn't somewhere in the back thinking, oh God, what about my size? If you own yourself, that confidence shines through into your sexual connections with people. So I'd say start to love your penis in the way we as women have been shamed for vulvas since the beginning of fucking the earth being created. And we've had to learn to love them. And it's time for you to do the same. As much as society has absolutely prioritized men sexually over women forever, the penis size issue is a real problem. And I didn't realize that it was still on so many people's minds until I got so many questions in about it today. And that's sad, because it's time for you to learn to love your penis, whatever size it is. I love them, and I've been with all shapes and sizes. If you've ever listened to any episode of mine before, you'll probably have heard me say that actually for me, larger is not the one. I don't deal well with the larger side of things. They don't really fit. That's painful for me. So not so much. And there are obviously other vulvas and vaginas that are more accommodating. Maybe they have more elasticity. And so that does work for them. But in the same way that everyone's vulva is different, everyone's penis is different too. But it's time to learn to love it. It's time to own it. It's also on all of us to be more mindful in our language, to stop using smaller based penis sizes as an insult and using phrases like big dick energy as a compliment. Let's just stop referring to our genitalia altogether so we can all just fucking enjoy our genitals and enjoy sex. And don't let the media or porn or society convince you that what your penis size is has any correlation to your masculinity. I mean, that's so toxic anyway, that we've been taught that. It's literally the same as any other part of your body growing. Same as your hands, same as your feet, same as your height. It's just our bodies, and they grow to where they grow to. It literally has no reflection on anything at all. You know, I would say beyond size, sexual health is something that everyone should be more mindful of, and checking in with yourself that everything is functioning as you would like it to. That's much more important than worrying about measurements. You know, size aside, keep in touch with your penis. Keep up with what it's doing. Because if you have any concerns about erectile or any other issues, it's really important to go and speak with a healthcare provider and address any concerns early on, because that will improve your overall sexual satisfaction for sure. So make friends with your penis, make friends with your partner's vulva, and make friends with your own penis. Learn to love it as you would a friend. Take care of it as you would a friend. Keep up with its movements. Make sure that you're still getting on well. You know, all of that stuff is more important. And of course, we're going to talk about communication. Have open dialogue with your partner. If you feel insecure, it has no effect on your masculinity to tell someone that. To ask for reassurance, that is fine. And talking about this stuff is actually key to having a successful sexual relationship. Because if you're feeling insecure and you're not present in your sexual time together, you're not really going to be enjoying it. And when both partners feel comfortable discussing these things, it's only going to lead to more satisfying and mutually enjoyable experiences. So if size is something that is causing you concern, bring it up in a space that should be non-judgmental and supportive. And that way, you can both work through any insecurities. It's so desperately about being open, honest, and focusing on what really matters, which is creating a pleasurable and intimate experience together. So, does penis size matter? I guess we could say the short answer is that it depends on the person, on the relationship, and what both partners value in their sexual experiences. But more often than not, size is not a critical factor. And the average penis size, for anyone wondering, is 5 inches. So I don't know what you all think you have to be. That's the average size, 5 inches. And in the largest study ever done on this, 84% of women said they were happy with their partner's penis size. And 2% on top of that said they wished their partner was smaller. So let that settle for a moment, and let's just end this with remembering that what truly makes for a satisfying sexual encounter, relationship, is emotional connection, good technique, open communication, and mutual respect. If you are focusing on these aspects in your sexual practice, you can ensure that both you and your partner or partners will be having a fulfilling and enjoyable sexual relationship. And all of that is regardless of size. Please learn to love your penises. But until then, I'll love them for you. Friends, lovers, listeners, men, penis owners, MT boys between height 5'10", 5'11". If you're still with me, hi, and I hope that something was helpful today. If you really took absolutely nothing from today's episode, then, well, I guess that's okay too. And as I said, I will see you on Sunday to answer the rest of your questions. Who knew that we were going to have so much to talk about? But I'm going to leave you with some thoughts that the vulva owners of the world have sent in when I asked them if they could tell the penis owners out there one thing to make sex better for them, what would it be? And here they are. When I say that's good, don't change it up. Hard agree. When we tell you it's good, keep doing it because you're on the right track. To a partner who is used to a certain routine getting results, sometimes it just isn't going to work for me today, and that's not on you. Absolutely fair. Listen, the biggest sexual muscle is the brain, and sometimes we're just not there. I feel like my cervix changes positions throughout my cycle, so one day a position that feels amazing might hurt, and that doesn't mean I won't enjoy it in a few days. That is so interesting and something I would love to delve further into in an episode about periods and menstrual cycles. But that is so fair and so interesting, and definitely something for men and penis owner partners to be more in touch with their vulva owner partners. So thank you for sending that in. Stop with that tongue in ear thing. Oh, I'm sorry, I have to disagree. I love a tongue in the ear. But whoever sent that in, you got to tell your partner, because if you don't like it, they've got to stop. The more noise, the better, guys. Hell to the yes. I can't do silent library. I completely agree. Please, men, moan for us. We want it. Foreplay is all day. Yes, I'd like to think I've made that very obvious through the episode. If I haven't managed it, well, then the whole thing has been a fail, really, hasn't it? But yes, it's all day. It's all day. It's all night. Foreplay's just, I'm just constantly in a state of foreplay. Yes, it's all day. That fast and hard on the clitoris doesn't always mean pleasurable. Sometimes it's too much. Sometimes it's too much. I'm going to say it's always too much. For me, it's not about fast and hard on it. I'll be like, slow down, be more gentle. Yeah, there you go. Sometimes it's too much. For me, that's always too much. Always go slower. I'd agree. Often I can take slower. There we go. Always go slower. Remember, we're not in a porn movie. Always remember that. Anyone who's trying to act like we're in a porn movie at this point, I don't really know what else to say to you. Stop sulking about wearing condoms. Fair. Please listen to the contraception section of this episode. Stop sulking about it. Put a fucking condom on. No glove, no love. Stop with the dick pics. Yeah, listen, I am not really one for a dick pic either. Some people love them. I don't know. I like an element of mystery, so save it, in my opinion. I probably want to see it, but just in real life. Again, foreplay all day, every day. And someone else has said, do foreplay every single time and don't half-ass it. Yeah, I don't know what else to say. I agree. Don't half-ass it. Enjoy, engage, be present. It's better. Be better so that we don't have to fake it. Now, no, this is a double-edged sword for me because, ladies, as I've discussed many times, you got to stop faking it because you're giving your partners a false sense of security. So they don't know they have to do better if they think they're doing well. So actually, you've got a massive part to play in that. Love you all dearly, obviously, but that's a bit savage and I cannot be completely on your side. Do I think things need to change so that sex gets better in general? Yes, of course. But the fake orgasms, they've got to stop because people don't know that things aren't working unless you tell them. So, not so much on that one. Love you though, but not so much on that one. And lastly, it's fun for us to be in control occasionally. In my experience, men of my partner's age, about 40, love to set the pace, going down on the woman, going for their ideal position, etc. But he resists me taking the lead. It would definitely improve our sex life if we took it in turns to be dominant. Yeah, and that sounds exciting to mix it up. You know, if you can play with those power dynamics sexually and see what works. So I think that's definitely space to have a very open conversation about just asking to try it once because he might love it. Definitely space for a conversation. So I really hope that you do broach this conversation and that you get to fucking dominate. Thinking of you, praying for you. I hope it works out. So there we go. These are some of the vulva owner thoughts. Make of them what you will. I'd say take some of them on board. And for today, I will leave you with this. When it comes to the offside rule, and when it comes to sex, both can be confusing if you're not in the right position. And timing is definitely everything. If you're too early or too late, it can throw off the play. But once you get the hang of it, it's all about enjoying the game. I hate myself. I'll see you all very soon. Men, penis owners, just a reminder that I love you. Let's all work together to do better. But for now, thanks for coming. Thank you for tuning in to Sex on the Peach today, and I hope that you enjoyed this week's episode. You can find and follow me on Instagram, YouTube and TikTok at Sex on the Peach Cast, and you can also get in touch with me at sexonthepeachcast@gmail.com. Please do continue to like, share, subscribe, rate and review wherever you listen to your podcasts, and I'll see you next week. Love.